everybody, Shelly here. Last week I showed you how I took this photo reference and turned it into this underpainting. Today I'm going to show you how I applied color to the underpainting, starting with the background and moving up from the bottom and into the face. Before I start into the face, I thought I'd show you how I painted the hand on the left side of the figure in time-lapse format. Also, I'll explain how I started my paint palette with certain colors and how I arrived at the color harmony that you see me working with here now. I looked to Thomas Gainsborough's painting The Blue Boy for my initial color inspiration, and I did some research and found out that he used a greenish blue. It's known as Prussian blue, and I in my research discovered that he chose his blue because he wanted it to have a greenish tint so that it would make sense and play into the greenish background that he was going to utilize. So I thought I would also use a greenish blue. I didn't have Prussian blue, so I used cerulean with a little addition of raw umber, which seems to take me into that greenish tinge of blue. So in addition to the blue on my palette, I have titanium white starting from the left top moving towards the right. Next you'll see Naples yellow light, cad yellow medium, cad red light. Just below cad red light I have permanent mauve. Then to the right of that I have a earth red, and then we have transparent oxide brown, the raw umber, and ultramarine blue. And way down on the left side of my palette, just under the whites there, I have something called bluish parma. I love this color. It's by Chauvrin, and it doesn't have strong tinting, but it does help take away some of the saturation in lighter flesh tones, and you can add a lot to it, so you can really build a nice big pile of paint without affecting the color too strongly. Still working my way through the hand. I'm doing it pretty much in the manner of the selective start that I like to utilize with portraits, so that I'm basically just laying down a brushstroke. I'm not blending them together. I'm just keep laying down. I'll lay one brushstroke over another and I'll let them overlap slightly, but I'm essentially carving into the painting and getting my fingers and just really making sure that the light coming in from the top left is being described. Because what is it that we're painting? We're not painting things, we're painting how the things are being lit up, how the light is striking the thing. So I'm constantly thinking, how is the light hitting this hand? Where are the shadows going to be? And since this is an outdoor scene and the sun is my main light source, it's a somewhat bright day, but not extremely bright. Like, let's imagine the subject is standing in the shady area, and that's still going to give us warmer lights and somewhat cooler shadows. I'm going to be using more of the permanent mauve and creating my shadows to be somewhat on the purple side. Okay, I am going to wrap up this hand and jump into the face and chest. So I started adding some color onto my underpainting. So in the last video you saw how I put the underpainting down for the figure. I have since filled in the outside background, and then I've started from the bottom, something I don't normally do. And I have worked my way up, and I am now going to paint for you the chest area and the face. I have some flesh tones down from the hands already and some blues for the petticoat. I have mixed additional flesh tone colors just to have a starting point. On my palette to this point, I have titanium white, Naples yellow pale, cadmium yellow medium, cadmium red light, vermilion deep. This is a new color for me, transparent earth red. I ran out of transparent oxide red, so the earth red has been working out okay. And then my usual go-to transparent oxide brown, that's the Rembrandt. I have also added on my palette this time the raw umber. I don't normally have earth tones on my palette. I don't like that they dry faster than my other regular colors, but I really felt the raw umber was needed in order to tone down some of the red that was coming from the transparent oxide brown for the background, and then I've since pulled it into some of my blue mixtures as well. And then I also have ultramarine blue on my palette. Two other colors that are on my palette, I have this really great color by Charvin. It's bluish Parma. I just love it in toning down flesh tones. It's not very strong, so it can really add a lot of volume to your piles, and in the same token it tones it down, but it doesn't make it so opaque or chalky like the the titanium white will do. And then I also have cerulean blue. That was the main blue that I used throughout the blues in the petticoat. All right, I'm going to start by laying down some flesh colors in this chest area. My subject is in outside light, the light source being the sun. This means the light values are going to be warmer, and when we move into these shadow areas, those are going to get a little bit more purple in color. So this is a great way to test it. I'm not super concerned about the chest being too perfect. So right now, that's reading as very cool and very blue. So I'm just gonna kind of wipe that in a little bit so it's not too thick. It's almost like I'm wiping it off with the paintbrush. So what I need to do is get some warmth back into this flesh color. I'm going to leave some of that neutral. It'll be good for other areas of the face, I'm sure. But I want to warm this up. I don't want to make it very much darker in value. It's going to be in the light. So I had some pale yellow mixed up, so I'm lightening it with that. This is like a purple color. So let me get a little bit more of this pale yellow so it can bring the value lighter. This is going to be a light flesh color. It's definitely warmer now. Let's take a peek. I think it needs to be a little bit lighter still yet. So I'm going to grab some of this Naples yellow pale. See if that doesn't lighten us up. And I'm looking at the color here value-wise. So what I'm seeing, grab a little of the pale yellow, a little titanium white, and I'm just going to mix a lighter version of that right over here. So I can use a little of both right on the chest area. I think that'll work. Okay, so let's start again. I'm going to grab this very light mixture we just made. Test that. Yeah, I like that much better. Anything would appear cool next to this orange color, but I think it will be fine. I can always adjust it more down the road. So a little bit of her hair is getting pulled down into this area here, so I'm going to keep the flesh light as I move out to the edge here on the left of the chest. And it's a little bit warmer underneath and a little bit darker. So up in this area here, I'm going to let some of that underpainting show through. I'm using this bright, it's a flat brush. My brights tend to have shorter bristles, my flats tend to have longer bristles, so I'm working with this bright brush. Okay, so she's got a little bit of a shadow happening down here, so I'm going to grab a little bit of our shadow, kind of a purpley color, and put in this long triangular shape that's hanging out down here. And then we will go back to grabbing some of our flesh. So right here, needs to be a little transition. So I'm going to grab a smaller brush, mix a color that's kind of in between those two colors of flesh, and see if we can't transition here a little bit. Just adding a little contrast into that shadow. So these are going to be the tiniest little transitions that are occurring here. It's okay for areas in your painting, like right here I can see a tiny little dot of my underpainting showing through. I'm not worried about covering that up completely. I think it's nice and it adds interest to let some of the underpainting show through. I have it poking through in some other areas, and I'm going to hopefully be able to leave those. So I'm kind of mixing a middle version of the lighter two skin tones that I have, just to quickly cover up this orange, which is kind of throwing me off a little bit. I think it's warming up, helping warm up definitely the skin tones underneath of it. So the light shape going up into the neck here. Going to get a really nice, thick, opaque amount of paint on my brush to really lay that in. I like to build the paint up thicker where I know I'm certain the value needs to be lighter. Now as we move away from this shape, it gets a little bit darker and a little bit more purple. The light's coming in from the top left, so it's going to be nice and bright in this little spot over here. The light should just be beaming down onto her chest. This area is very much in shadow. The right side of the neck. Now the hair's going to come down into here, so I'm not pulling that all the way up just yet. I don't want to confuse myself and make me think my neck is going to be too high up. The neck does kind of come down. It is pretty close. Can add a little bit more here. Solidifying that cast shadow underneath the chin. And then the right side of the neck's catching light, but not as much as this little highlight here. Comes down in there. I like flats and brights because you can get nice hard edges or soft edges. It's a very versatile brush. I need a warm kind of middle value, so I picked up some of that cad red light and I'm just making a little splash of it right here in the middle. And I'm going to carve out the neck a little bit more. Neck angles slightly. It's not straight up and down, it is angled slightly. I think in order to see that, get a little more red, I need to angle it down more towards the bottom part of the neck, like so. We'll see how that plays out. Now there's a transition happening here between this lighter shape and this slightly darker shape that is somewhere in this world. So I'm mixing these two colors together. See if I can get that transition to happen. Like so. Now I'll just restate some of that lighter shape. Using a soft brush, it's small, and if you put it on parallel to the canvas, then the wet paint that I'm adding on top of the wet paint will just glide right onto the top of it and not blend. There we go. I'm just gonna add some of that warmth along this edge here on the left because I'm going to pull the hair down into that. Here's this cast shadow. Playing around with how it's transitioning up under the chin towards the lighter side. I think that's enough in the neck area to tell us where we need to go. Question is, does this curve happen at the right place? So if I look at my reference, I come straight across. It starts about here. I'm looking at this blue shape and then there. So yeah. Happening where it needs to happen. So I think what I'm gonna do is push this shadow up. I feel like the neck needs to be a tiny bit longer. So let's move the shadow chin edge up a tad. because then there is this reflected warm light coming in right about here. That might be a little too dark in value. There we go. It's lighter than the shadow below it, pretty significantly. Is another little shadow just above it. It's kind of this more purpley color. It's coming in here. So I have no grid. The only thing that I have to guide me is comparative measuring and just visually checking the proportions by eye. So that's how this is working. I'm putting in the chin, which is that warmer, lighter, sunlit flesh color that we have mixed up. Now if I decide, once the other colors are put down, it needs to be warmer, I could go over it with warmer flesh tones that I mix up, wet into wet alla prima style, or I could just let it dry and then glaze over it with a transparent yellow. So nothing is permanent here. And the chin is pushing out into space. So I'm adding some nice light colors to it so we get that good volume happening. So I needed to put that in so that I could gauge the neck distance. So this is going to come up. And her jaw goes out past the neck about to there. So I guess I'm keeping with the trend of working from the bottom up. Every painting's different. You never know where you're gonna start. Sometimes I start with an eye, as you know. Sometimes I start with the mouth. In this case, I've started with the chin. And what I want to do now is just solidify the shadow shape that I see on the right side of the head, this side here. I'm going to go all the way up with this shadow color and then carve into it any features and things that need to happen. Because there's not a lot of warmth in my shadow side, except for right underneath the ear where the hair is moving into that area. Just restating the shadow line under the chin so I can really see where the chin ends, which will tell me how to lay out my face going up. Somewhere in this world is going to be our mouth. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to put down some flesh color, shadow moving into light. I'm gonna grab a small soft brush and take some of my lip color that I pre-mixed, and just imagine this mouth is going to be here approximately. So we'll carve it out. I'll find the shadows and highlights of it once I know that this is where just about I want it to be. So that's where the mouth is going to land. And I know I need a bit more distance to the nose. Somewhere in that world. Now we can look at the shadows and carve out some of those shadow planes. Right up into that eye socket. I want to get a bit more red on my nose. I often feel like the face is kind of like an opal. It has many different colors going all through it. It's a nice strong shadow going right down towards the Cupid's bow of the mouth. A nice highlight happening here and some shadow here. So let's find our eye sockets, which should put them just about here. So we know the top of the hat is here, bottom of the nose here, eyes here, and then we can make adjustments. Be carving out her eyes. Very different from the selective start method that I normally paint in. I thought I would try something different today. There's many different ways to tackle a painting. As long as your end results get you where you want to go, that is all that matters. Base just below the nose where it kind of goes into that, what they call the cornerstone. Little cornerstone area here. It's the space between the eyebrows. It's moved under, it's poking in away from the light. And I want to just put some neutral color down. And then I'll put my eyebrows on top of it. And I'm thinking about transitioning from the center of the forehead into the shadow. And moving into the lighter side, which is on the left here. This would be known as what a lot of artists refer to as the awkward stage. That's why I like selective start. I always feel like it just looks good right out of the gate. So I want a little orangey warmth up here just as we moving into. So where are we going to put our eyebrows? So a little bit of light hitting that cheek on the right side of the face. Before I get too solidly locked into the eyes, I want to work on the nose some more. too solidly placed. Okay, so shadow underneath the ball of the nose, just about here. Looking at placing the nostril, I like to use a good bit of a reddish brown color for the nostril. You see that in a lot of the old master paintings. A lot of light hitting this cheek on the left. I'm grabbing some of this really light Naples yellow pale that I mixed with a little bit of the white and some of that bluish Parma. Still just carving out some of these shapes. What I need to do though, whoops, well, it's just at the top. I need to get these eyebrows in. I feel like that's gonna really help solidify some of these features and where they need to land. So you guys may have seen where I painted the face for this. I did a head study. It was the same lighting and from the same photo shoot, but she had her eyes. This time her eyes are going to be looking towards the right of the canvas. Last time her eyes were looking towards the left, but overall it was the same kind of setup. I think that's a good amount of information for the lips. So I'm looking at the face as if it were little mosaic tiles of color and different values, different positions. If I just think about placing them where I see them, each little shape, when I'm finished, I should have a face. Meanwhile, I am not thinking about that I'm painting a face. I'm thinking about what shapes do I see and what color are they, and value. I don't want to blend too much. When I put down a color, I really just want to try to leave it. And then I'll lay down the next color next to it. I'll let the brush strokes overlap. I could also stitch them together. Stitching colors together is just bringing the edges together as if you were stitching, like when you sew, if you sew. I feel like that cad red light does a good job of making a cheek color It's just got enough saturation in it. It's not too heavily saturated. I'm putting in the shadow shape of the lower part of the nose, and then I'm going to go back and find the nostril. I know, it's going to live in this shadow shape. I think we are pretty close to correct position of the nose. Now, it's not a portrait commission, so I don't have to go 100% for a likeness here. As long as things look correct, we'll be good. The face is definitely going to be the focal point. So anywhere in your focal point, you can punch up the saturation to draw the viewer's eye towards it. You can punch up the detail. You can punch up the contrast. That's another way to draw the eye to an area. Lots of contrast. So I'm looking to use saturation, detail, and contrast, especially once I get the eyes in. That's probably where you'll see the majority of contrast. I'm just really thinking I want to get those eyebrows in. So let's do this. Let's take a little transparent oxide brown mixed with a tiny bit of our darkest flesh shadow color. That'll be a good place to start. I'm feeling like, so I'm looking at the top of the forehead, and then how far down do we go? About here. And they come pretty straight across, as eyebrows do. And they stop just at the edge of the nostril, so about here. The body of the eyebrow tends to be darker than the edges, so we can add a little value down there in the center. And this model has beautiful thick eyebrows, which I love, so we're going to stick with that. Now let's get the other one in. It's going up slightly. I think it's giving this little feeling of questioning in her eyes. Eyebrows are important in conveying emotion. And if you are doing a commission portrait where you must have a likeness, it's very, very important to get the eyebrows of your sitter painted correctly. If your eyebrows are not right, then you're constantly going to be looking at your painting going, something does not look right, something's not getting the complete likeness. And that is usually the culprit, the eyebrows. I feel like that is looking pretty good. And I just want to solidify this hairline a little bit more. Especially on the right side of the head. The hat swoops down pretty close to the eyebrows. We don't have ours positioned. I don't have mine positioned quite that low. Just moving our eyebrow up a little bit. This raw umber is going to be good for the darker parts of the hair, which we'll use to carve out her face on the left. Remembering that angle that I wanted to have. And this nice long neck. So we have some of the light hitting the hair on the upper left. I'm going to use some of our flesh tones into this raw umber to give us some of these highlights. I'm going to be softening that hairline on the left by pulling some of that cheek into it as well. There's this nice dark shadow coming up here by the forehead and then around in here. So let me just take some of this dark, get rid of this orange over here so we can really see the shape of the head correctly. I'm going to grab my coma brush. I can soften this hairline into the forehead. I'm looking to transition into this darker shadow side on the right, keeping with the nice purple temperature over purple hue overtones. There's a purple color here on the right upper cheek area. It's not very dark, but it is quite purple. So it can be helpful to mix your colors right next to one another like I'm doing here so you can see how they transition from one to the other. I think that's better. Also, it's the same color as this ear. It's peeking out on the right. A little bit of highlight on this bottom lip. And that bottom lip value transitions right into this side of the face. They're very, very close. There's no hard line in that area. There is a line in the center lip area there. I'm just going to keep softening that up with some really saturated reddish color on the underneath plane of the upper lip. And that moves right into, and I see it just below on the bottom lip in the center. I'm just dabbing those colors on. Not really even brushing them on. Just tapping into where I want them to go. let's darken those nostrils again. Just keep solidifying them. Nice bit of red. I'm just carving my nostrils out, the flesh that's around them. Put in the other one. And again, you can bring some flesh. I'm gonna bring a little bit of this pink in it, just to carve them out. I feel like that's pretty close to where they need to be. Get this shadow shape on the side of the nostril. Remember, the middle zone of the face is the pink zone. So I'm using some nice pink color here. Now we're moving back into that purple shadow up here on the upper cheek. Pretty deep purple shadow here on the inner right eye. And that's going to move down to the side plane of the nose. Softening the edges of the eyebrows by moving some eyebrow color and some shadow color back and forth into one another. Usually the eyebrow color on the top of the eyebrow is a little lighter because the light's hitting those hairs. Looking for these shapes that are underneath the eyebrows before we get to the eyelid crease and then move into the eyeball. And the flesh color under the eyebrow is much lighter on this right side because it is in the light. I'm stitching some of that flesh into the hairline there. Grab some of this raw umber and restate the shadow shape that I see here. I think that's looking pretty. Let's put in a eyelid crease on the right. And we'll carve out some of the color that's below it. Now we need an eyelid crease on the left, or the eye that's on the right here. Left, right, I never know what I'm saying. It can be helpful to put the eyelid crease in, working your way down from the eyebrow, because then you can put the eyelid in to help carve out the crease, and you have a nice dark crease line that way. I want to get it nice and dark so when I carve into it, I don't have to restate it. So it's really important for me right now to understand the distance from the bottom of the eyebrow to the eyelid crease and make sure that distance is correct. Now I'm going to use this really light flesh to make the eyelid. And then it gets a little pinker purpley as it moves towards the tear duct. And I'm going to use a similar color for the lash line. I'm not going to go in too heavy just yet. So I'm looking at the shape of the eyelid to determine where the lash line is going to go. There's going to be more shadow on the inner corner because it's moved away from the light. And I'm going to use some of this blue color. I'm just going to gray it a little bit with this purple color I have. And this will be the white of the eye, which is not really white. Go back and put any highlights and things that we want after we have everything kind of in the right place. I'm going to use this neutral grayish color. A little bit of blue to show where our iris pupils are going to go. In here. Still carving into the eyelid. A lot of pretty pink highlight on this right side of it. Just pushing things up a little bit. And that's the beauty of not putting them down too dark. Eyelid crease back in, because I just painted over it. So be it. Found it once, you can find it twice. Or 3 times, or 4 times. However many times you have to find it. You can keep finding it. So it kind of dips into a little bit of a purple color here in the outer corner. Some tiny, tiny transitions. Tapping in some of that eyelash line. I'm going to give her a little bit of a highlight here towards the bottom lash line. There's a pinkish highlight on the rim of the eyelid just underneath the pupil. And then it's purpley shadow color underneath. Just carve that out like so. There's a darkish purple reddish corner here. Inner corner. It's always good to put a nice amount of red in the eyes, especially in the inner corners. It really helps make it bring some life to the portrait, to the painting, the figurative painting. Suggest a little bit of lower eyelashes. Nothing too crazy. And I'm going to pull some of this really light highlight flesh color right up into here. I'm going to transition that out onto the upper rim of the cheek. And then work that into this cheek. I'm stitching the edges together. And I see see a good bit of that highlight here on the forehead, so let's see if we can balance the face out by putting in this highlight here. Goes right to the top of the eyebrow and all the way up to the hairline. And I'm going to use my color brush, make sure it's clean, just to knock down any brush strokes that are too harsh. That'll work. So I like to do this and then restate the harder edges that I want to see. I'm going to place the tiniest little dot of really saturated light blue in the eye. And then just kind of work that in. And then we can restate pupil. And this is where that contrast is going to come in. I want to have a good bit of contrast, but not anything too crazy. Trying to darken up the inner corner and at the same time put a nice shot of red into it. Once we have some of the features more solidified in place, then you can spend as much time as you want bringing up the detail. Don't go crazy with the detail until you know things are in the right place. That's enough for that eye, and I should do something on the eye on the right before I keep going. Okay, just gonna check with my proportion tool. The width between the eyes is usually equal to one eye. And it is, therefore, we can do comparative measuring by just seeing the width of this eye on the left. And I'm going to make a note with this color. It's a fleshy purple color. So we've got there. Check it again. So that's looking pretty good. My stupid squeaky chair. Very squeaky. There's a really pretty highlight right here on the inner corner of this left eye, moving right up into the highlight on the nose here. I'm just stepping back and taking a look at things, and I feel like it's working. Do want to just push this up a little bit. There we go. Okay, eyelid. We need an eyelid. Actually, I'm gonna push up the eyelid crease. Now we're ready for an eyelid. Okay, lash line. Same color as the crease at this point. It's also a good way to get some of that red color into the corners of your eyes. Just get it in there initially, and then we can go back and work with that. A little highlight happening here, the inner corner of that eye. I'm just gonna put it in. Let's go for a lash line then. I think that's looking correct. Probably need to nudge it a little bit here and there, but for the most part, it's good. Let me put in an iris and carve out some of the white of the eye. Now, the eye on the right side, the white of the eye is going to be slightly darker than the other one. There is some nice blue coming into the iris. I believe it's bouncing up into her eye from her blue petticoat. Solidifying that outer corner of the right eye. I really want to push some of that darkness. Now there's a light hitting the under rim, and that's too light, but I just really wanted to see where it was going to go. So just blend it in. There we are. And there is some nice purpley shadow under that lower rim. Trying to carve out some of that shadow from under the lower lashes, and we'll put the lashes in. And there's a bit of a shadow on the inner corner here. And a nice bit of red on the inner corner, which we have. I'm just really going to punch it in there. And then restate the blackish color for the lashes. I'm not using black. It's actually, I don't have any black on my palette. It's the raw umber mixed with a little bit of the cerulean and ultramarine blue. And then I get like a grayish flesh tone for the lower lashes. We're just gonna suggest little bit. I don't see them really in the inner corner of the eye so much. What I do see is a highlight. Right there in the tear duct. So pushing that lower lash line up into that highlight on the outer corner, tiny bit more. I think that's looking good. Now I need to pull the lash line past it. And I want to bring some of the hair over the ear, like so. I see a little bit of, ears have a lot of red in them. So I see some red happening in here. It's very dark red though. Very dark red. Just trying to soften that jawline on the right side of the face. I see a little bit of an ear over here. I will continue tweaking the face until I feel like it's to a degree of finish that I'm happy with. I'll put the hat in and then I will see how it looks. I'm just going to keep developing it to a point of high degree of detail. I want the face to be very detailed, so I'm just going to keep working on that and I'll show you guys where I ended up at. So here's where I'm going to stop for now, and after I finish the hat, and I'll probably detail out the face some more, I will post the finished results on my Instagram at SJ Cox Art, and you can find it on my website westernsinwood.com. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.